Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing for Perivale Station Kiosk. My name is Councillor Baclini, and I shall be chairing the meeting. My colleagues, Councillor Colley, Councillor Nakpal, and I comprise today's subcommittee. Hatun Zeb is the legal advisor to the subcommittee, and Sean O'Brien is the Democratic Services Officer, who is the clerk to the subcommittee and who will be minuting the meeting. You will have all received or seen the agenda pack within which is contained the licensing officer's report with details of the application in section 1. To confirm, we are dealing with a new premises license application in relation to Perivale Station Kiosk, Newsagents Kiosk, Perivale Station, Horsenden Lane South, Perivale, UB6 8AE. We note the following representations objecting to the application have been received. One representation has been received from the Metropolitan Police Service, and 5 objections has been received from members of the public. The subcommittee have read all objector submission in the agenda and will take them into consideration when making their decision. We have also received additional conditions from the Metropolitan Police, which were confirmed and agreed upon by the applicant. In accordance with procedure, I shall invite the applicant to present the application, answer any questions, and call any witnesses. I'll also invite those who have made representations to make their representations, answer any questions, and call any witnesses. At the conclusion of the hearing, the subcommittee, accompanied by the legal advisor and the committee Democratic Services Officer, will retire to consider its decision. The decision will be given at the end of the meeting and confirmed in writing forthwith. If the panel cannot reach a decision today, you will be notified in writing within 5 working days of the panel's decision. Before we start, I'd like to ask Ms. Debbie to put yourself on mute, please. Ms. Allen, can you thank you so much. As we've done the introduction already, I will move now to asking the legal representative to give his representation, please.
Chair, thank you very much. Firstly, my client would like to apologise for not attending in person. He's currently in Pakistan, unable to gain access to the internet. He was hoping to be here today. We did mention this to the licensing officer, who suggested we could ask for an adjournment today, but I think that would be quite disrespectful to the residents and others who have attended today. So I've got instructions from him, and hopefully we'll crack on with those instructions, and hopefully I can answer any questions that you have today. So just outlining very briefly the nature of this business. This is a very small convenience store, sort of grab and go type operation, right next to Perivale tube station, where people come in, they grab a drink, some food in the morning when they're on the way to work, and maybe grab convenience items when they get off the tube or when they're walking by the station. So it sells everything from kind of soft drinks to milk and the basic amenities that you might expect in a relatively small convenience store. This application just seeks to allow them to enhance their line of products they sell, to add alcohol to those sales under the terms of the license and the conditions agreed with the police. Now, the hours this shop operates are, especially in the evening hours, which are often the hours of concern, are very reasonable. We're only asking for a license till 7 o'clock, which is well within the core hours set out in the licensing policy statement for Ealing, and doesn't therefore engage the nighttime economy. The policy statement talks a lot about concerns around off sales, where people may be going, leaving a pub, for example, and picking up another drink on their way home. So none of that is engaged by this application because of from a licensing perspective, the early closing time of 1900. The application was made by the client themselves. When we get involved, we had a discussion with the police. The discussion was around the nature of conditions that the police wanted to see on the application. We essentially have agreed all of the police's conditions. We made a few amendments for operational reasons to update a couple of conditions, but actually the discussion we had with the police was incredibly positive, and there wasn't a huge amount of discussion. We had a couple of email exchanges and a 10-minute conversation, and then everything was agreed. You have that set of conditions in front of you, so I don't need to run through all of those with you today. And as a result, the police, who are the experts in this field, the people who have to enforce the law and have to deal with antisocial behavior and street drinking, which we know occurs. We're not denying that this occurs. There's a police protection order in place for Ealing because of this. So we have to play our role, certainly, in that process. But what the police conditions do is they do engage those roles. So if we go back to the licensing policy statement for Ealing, and we look at their recommendations when it comes to street drinking and how to deal with street drinking, they have a number of suggestions that they raise that the applicant should either take one or more of these suggestions on board when they apply for licenses. And those are restrictions around single unit sales, which we've agreed to with the police. The terminal hour, which again I've mentioned, in 1900 is relatively early. The restriction on miniatures, which has been agreed in the conditions, and the restrictions around high strength alcohol, so anything above 5.5% when it comes to beer or cider. Now, these are the suggestions made in the licensing policy statement as the best ways to limit the problems associated with street drinking, and it suggests you should adopt either one of them or a combination of them. What we've done is adopted all of the suggestions in the licensing policy statement, so we can't go much further than that when it comes to conditions to deal with this particular issue. So we have taken the matter seriously, but we also take the residents' representation seriously, and we understand their concerns, and they'll speak for themselves. But essentially, the main concern that I've read in the resident conditions is around street drinking and antisocial behaviour, and the need for another licensed premises in this area. Now, you'll be aware that need is not an issue that's addressed through licensing. It's perfectly reasonable for a small shop to apply for a premises license, providing they put the reasonable measures in place through a set of conditions through their hours to mitigate the risks. And that's what we've tried to do by agreeing conditions with the police, is to mitigate those risks through those conditions. There's no cumulative impact in this area. So it's not that there's a high density of licensed premises in the area that we have to concern ourselves with. So we have to, as license holders, do as much as is reasonably practical to try and reduce the risk, and that's what we've done. We've agreed these 15 conditions. We've also put forward, I should also point out, an additional 5 conditions for the committee to consider, which we'd be more than happy to accept. And they're there to try and, again, strengthen the conditions offered by the police. So they discuss the training of the staff who work at the shop, making sure that the spirits are kept away, so they're not self-service spirits, they're behind the counter, making sure that we are responsible for litter that's generated around the shop, and then to put additional signage in place and additional, when we strengthen the condition around the register of refusals, which is always very important in these cases. So the applicant has put together quite a strong application, quite a strong set of conditions. And while we appreciate that there are concerns, we don't, every application has to be considered on its individual merits, and we think the merits of this application are significant. So I'll open you to any questions. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayhew. I'll now move to questions. I'll ask the objectors if they have any questions, please.
My hand is raised. This is Debbie Allen speaking. The first thing is, I've just had a message that the meeting is not being live streamed. Dragana cannot seem to access it.
Let's ask Sean. Sean, please, can you confirm if this is the case?
The hearing is live streamed. If she were to refresh her web browser, it will appear. I have just sent a link to all the objectors for emails that I've got. A link to the actual live stream right now. So if you just click that, or maybe send that to Debbie.
Thank you so much. Okay, my first question is, the applicant was assisted with his application by the council?
I don't think that's a question for me.
Yes, sorry, Miss Debbie, are you asking the question to Mr. Mayhew, or are you asking us?
What I heard,
Yes.
well, first of all, I put the question in the chat. Why is the applicant unable to attend today?
Mr. Mayhew, can you please answer the question?
The applicant is traveling in Pakistan and doesn't have access to the internet. He's in a more remote area of Pakistan. He was hoping to join, and as I said, we mentioned this to the licensing officer, but we felt it was better to go ahead rather than to postpone and everyone have to come back on a different day.
Okay, and who is his deputy? If he is away, who's managing the shop right now?
He is a member of staff.
And that person couldn't attend today?
That person's managing the shop.
Okay, so if you could note that as a concern, then he doesn't seem to have a deputy to. This is an important matter, and he is not able to get internet, which is accessible everywhere. So if you could register that as a concern. Now, you've put, or somebody said that the police are the experts. In the police's recommendations, I didn't see any data on how they've come to their conclusion that Perivale needs another shop selling alcohol. Where have they done past research, current research, and future projections on what they expect more alcohol is going to do to Perivale?
Yeah, Miss Debbie, unfortunately, because the police are not here to answer your question, no one can answer this question.
Then I believe
but if you have
the police
a
are not
question,
here, the applicant is not here, this meeting needs to be rescheduled, because these are the very people that we should be questioning.
The police are satisfied with everything that they had originally raised with the applicant in terms of CCTV and all the other conditions that they've added. And please, if you have any question to ask directly to Mr. Mayhew in regards to this application, please do. Please do now.
But the key people are not here.
Mr. Mayhew is representing the applicant, and he is, I'm sure, very capable of answering any questions that you have. Ms. Hatunzeb, can you
that
please
was the
confirm?
question. There was a question. What does the shop owner know about the area? Is he a member of the area? Is he aware of that Perivale is now a crime hotspot? Because this has not shown up in the police paperwork, that Perivale is now a crime hotspot. Almost every day they are here in the Medway and in Perivale area. So I cannot understand how an application to sell more alcohol is going to serve the community. That's the question.
Mr. Mayhew.
Could I please ask another
Sorry,
question?
Ms. Flynn. I will ask you to ask your question after Mr. Mayhew has the opportunity to answer Ms. Debbie's question.
Okay, so there were two questions. I think one is whether Mr. Patel is where Mr. Patel is resident, which I don't think is relevant to the application. And I wouldn't disclose that information in the same way that information about residence is not disclosed. I can't answer questions on behalf of the police as to why they're not here. All I can say is that we've worked with the police and they're satisfied that the application now meets the criteria to allow the premises to sell alcohol. I can't answer any further on their behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayhew. Ms. Flynn, you can ask your question.
Hello, I think Ms. Allen raised a very good question about, it's like understanding how the premises operate now and how they're gonna change. And Mr. Mayhew, if you are the legal representative, and I would hope that you know all the data, could you please tell us what is the current footfall for the kiosk, and what projections have owner made in relation to future footfall, and how that's gonna be managed in terms of keeping it all at the very tiny place? I don't know if you could please remind me what is the square footage of the premise and how many aisles there are in that kiosk, please.
Well, there's a plan associated with the application, which you have. It is a very small. I don't know the exact footage of the prem.
Okay.
of the premises, but it's a very small small outlet. We don't expect there to be a huge amount of difference in the footfall that there currently is. This is a.
So could you please provide numbers?
For what numbers would you like? The number of people attending?
The number who your current footfall. Yes.
I don't have that number because.
So how can you expect that there won't be much more if you don't even know how many people are coming now? Are we talking about change between 15 people per hour to 20 people per hour? Are we talking about 200 people per hour versus 500 people per hour? It is important. I frequent that kiosk. I am commuter, and I go commuting Monday to Friday most days, and I know exactly what's happening in that kiosk. It gets very crowded at certain times of the day, and it indeed serves as a very important community hub. What happens when you bring person, and I've been in the kiosk when it happened, when you have someone who's becoming abusive or wants things quickly and they couldn't be delivered, it's a nuisance to everybody else. It creates hazard for everybody else, simply because that behavior tinkles to everyone. There are people who are there with children in the morning and in the afternoon. There are people who want to rush very quickly. It is very difficult to manage if someone starts blocking the aisles. It's actually become a dangerous situation for everyone. I can just imagine how would you
manage? I have to stop you here. Do you have a question? Because you will have an opportunity to speak. Yes.
My question is, how are you gonna manage actively the footfall and busy kiosk with people who are buying in addition to what it's intended to do? What's gonna be opportunity to keep it safe and flowing?
Thank you.
Okay, the flowing nature. I mean, the fact that the premises is not able to is sometimes gets busy is I don't think affects necessarily this application. I mean, people are going to come and pick up their products, whether that be milk or some cans of beer or a bottle of wine, and they're going to queue up and go in. Now, people in every shop in this country get upset if they don't get served quickly, and it's difficult when you have a very small outlet. We don't expect that the footfall is going to increase massively. We're just trying to increase the lines that people can buy. So if someone who comes in already wants to take a bottle of wine on their way home, that they have the opportunity to pick up a bottle of wine on their way home. That doesn't necessarily increase the footfall a huge amount. I don't think this is going to be a destination venue. This is going to remain a convenience venue for people who come through the tube station, who people are walking past. I think most people who are thinking about doing their kind of more weekly shop or their bi-weekly shop are still going to go to the local Tesco's or the local supermarket. This is not going to become that destination. This is very much a grab and go type operation, and you've been to the premises, so you know roughly the size of the premises and the nature of the people come in. I don't think the difference in management that they have now is going to change.
However, if you say there is no difference, the opportunity is that the plan says that it's going to be additional locked cabinets. So it is going to increase the time someone is being served, therefore, at the premises at any given time. And talking about, we are residents of Perivale, we know exactly how dangerous and vile some of the customers could be. So what is security measure? Will your client be prepared to introduce a security guard for the premises?
But there's no consumption of alcohol on the premises. It would be unusual for a shop to have security, a shop of that size to have security. If people were drinking on the premises, then that's the kind of condition that we would certainly consider. Can I also address the first point you made around the locked cabinets, because there is a condition that we've agreed with the police on that in that respect. But that is only when the shop is able to sell alcohol, the cabinets where the fridges where the alcohol will be kept will be open. It's just because the Licensing Act requires us to lock alcohol away when it's not able to be served. So in the very early morning, when they're open for commuters and they're not selling alcohol has to be locked away or put away where customers can't get it for self-service. That's a condition we agreed with the police, and actually it's a condition that we strengthened by adding to that a normal condition that Ealing put forward, that not only would we lock it away, but that we would put signage up so that people are very clear that they're unable to purchase it at that time.
If you say you're going to be selling alcohol from 8 a.m., this is commuter time.
Yes, but the law states that alcohol must be locked away or not accessible to customers at any time when the premises is open, but they're not allowed to sell alcohol. So the premises opens at 5:30, but they can't sell alcohol at 5:30. So at that time, the fridges will be locked so that people can't access those fridges, and other alcohol will be stored behind the counter so people can't access that alcohol. So that's just a practicality of the operation, that we have to lock that alcohol away. Obviously, once the premises is open and they're able to sell alcohol, then the cabinets will be open and they'll be able to pick that up in the same way they pick up a soft drink at the moment.
Chair, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Alex. Ms. Flynn, do you have any more questions?
No.
Thank you. Alex, do you have any questions? Debbie? You are on mute, Alex.
I think it will be more worth my while just reading the statement that I presented if I can get started on that, unless anyone else, any other objectors have any questions.
Miss Debbie, do you have any questions?
I have no objections for Alex to go next. I will go after Alex. Thank you.
Alex actually do not have a question. So please go ahead and ask your question, Debbie.
Okay, my question is, I've put it in the chat. Mr. Mayhew, who do you actually work for? Are you working for the client or the council, for the applicant or the council?
I'm an agent working for the applicant.
Thank you. So are you able to tell us, does the applicant know that Perivale is a crime hotspot?
The applicant's aware of the representations that were made by all the residents and the police, which I think highlight that area. I mean, we're aware that there's an issue around street drinking and antisocial behaviour, and that's, as I explained in my presentation, that's why the conditions were agreed with the police.
And the applicant is satisfied, although he is aware of the drink issue in the area, he feels that there is a need for more alcohol to be sold?
Well, need is not a matter for licensing. So the need for a premises would only be engaged if there was a cumulative impact policy in place, for example, which there isn't for this area. Businesses are allowed to try and maximise their business, providing that they don't undermine the licensing objectives. And the way we do that is to put a set of conditions in place to deal with the specific concerns that are raised, in this case, predominantly around street drinking and antisocial behaviour. We've done that to the satisfaction of the police. We've looked at the licensing policy statement, which sets out how the licensing authority are going to promote the objectives of the Licensing Act, and we've met all 4 of the criteria that they list in there, plus we've put additional conditions in place that I've mentioned already. So it's not so much a matter of need, so much as a matter of making sure that we do whatever is reasonable to mitigate the circumstances that lead to antisocial behaviour and street drinking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayhew. Miss Debbie, do you have more questions?
No, I've already, just for the representative to be aware, I've raised a complaint about how this process is flawed and seems to go against the community that, you know, the police is actually supposed to be serving. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I will now move to my fellow councillors, Councillor Nakpal and Councillor Colley. Do you have any questions to ask Mr. Mayhew?
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Mayhew, can you explain to the panel why the applicant feels the need to serve alcohol from 8 a.m, please?
It's the application that was submitted in that manner. It was felt that was a reasonable time to submit. I mean, a lot of shops open at that time, and they would normally a shop, you know, if we obviously do a lot of applications, and you'll seen lots of applications for shops. you normally try and make the application for the duration of the shop opening hours, precisely to avoid the issues around having to lock it up and so on. Because, you know, the fact that alcohol is on sale but not available can also lead to conflict, because people come in and are unable to buy something which they can see. And of course, most people don't understand licensing law and don't understand why, if the alcohol is there, they can't buy it at a certain time. So that can also lead to conflict. So, you know, 8 o'clock is a reasonable opening time for shops. So I think that's the thought process, is to say, well, okay, you know, 5:30 would be absurd. But 8 o'clock, you know, your Tesco's, your Waitrose and your Sainsbury's are open selling alcohol. So that was a way of thinking about that.
If the panel were to recommend slightly different timing, would you or the applicant be open to considering that?
I mean, we would obviously ideally like to stay with the application that's submitted. I think it would depend on what sort of hours you were thinking of. If it's a little bit later in the morning, you know, we've had this discussion. I've had this discussion with the applicant, and obviously we would try to avoid that. We think the measures in place are suitable for the application that we put forward. But if it's a few hours, you know, if we were saying 10 o'clock, for example, I don't think that would be out of the realms of acceptance.
Yes. And sorry, just one more question. How many staff will be manning the kiosk at varying times of the day, please?
There's normally one member of staff. I say it's a very small outlet.
Okay. Sorry, just on the back of that, then, if a customer were to open an alcoholic beverage within the immediate vicinity of the kiosk, how does the applicant intend to deal with that situation?
Well, the applicant's role is to do what's reasonable to control the area. You know, we can advise customers, we can put signage up, which is what we've offered in the application, to put signs up. You know, there's nothing illegal about opening a can of beer when you buy it in a shop and walking away from it. The public protection order deals with people who are drinking who are also involved in antisocial behavior. So, you know, if I go to a shop and on a warm day and I decide to buy a can of beer and walk down the street drinking that can of beer, there's nothing illegal about that, and there's no antisocial behavior if I'm walking down the street. So that the applicant has to control the outside area, and when there's no customers there, they can walk out and check. But it's not unlawful to drink alcohol.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nakpal. Councillor Colley, do you have any questions?
No, Chair. I think Councillor Nakpal has. I also had a concern that maybe the opening time could be adjusted slightly.
Yes.
I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Colley. I will move now to the objectors to give their representations. And who would like to start first, please? Go ahead, Mr. Alex.
Thank you very much, Chair, sub-licensing committee members and officers present. Thank you for letting me speak in objection to this application. Perivale has been my home for the last 17 years, and I'm very involved in community volunteer work. I'm a trustee and volunteer at Perivale High. Magda Flynn, who's also here as the chair of the Board of Trustees for Perivale High, that's Perivale Community Managed Library. I'm also vice chair of the Medway Village Residents Association, Tregarden Club Sevich, who came on earlier briefly as the chair of that residents association, representing about 800 householders, in very close proximity to the Perivale Station kiosk. So I've also participated in various local committees, attended most local meetings, and I've worked locally as a residential estate manager. As such, I'm very, very well known to residents. I'm very familiar with local concerns. I'm hence speaking not only for myself, which I am, but also on behalf of other residents who have confided in me, but who have safety concerns about providing their names and addresses to the applicant as the procedure requires. I will be addressing a number of specific points the applicant's agent, Peter, has made in his submissions throughout this. So I think many local people actually in Perivale would agree these days. Perivale residents are forced constantly to battle, not to make our area better, although we would all very much like to do so, and some of us manage, but we're distracted by applications like this, which we have to fight to stop our worst area from just deteriorating and becoming worse. I should state at the outset that the station kiosk, Perivale Station Kiosk, provides a small convenience store by the station, as has been discussed, and it's used by many residents, it's fair to say, including myself. And Mr. Manager Kumar Patel, the applicant, knows me by face and name and is always very friendly to me, and vice versa. I support his store and business. When he refurbished and expanded his store a few years ago, I publicized this on the local community social media page. When he started selling tea and coffee, I thought that was a great idea for morning commuters. However, and this is the big but, such support from me and from other residents cannot be unqualified and unconditional when, I'm afraid, greed for additional profit risks causing significant harm to the neighbourhood. As has been mentioned, Perivale has an ongoing and extremely serious problem with street drinking, partly stemming from its demographic makeup. A controlled drinking zone, or technically a public spaces protection order, was first introduced to Perivale Ward in 2008 to deal with this. It was only rolled out across the whole of the borough 11 years later in 2019. Perivale was one of the first PSPO controlled drinking areas in the borough, as it's long been recognised as a particular hotspot in the borough for alcohol and alcoholism-related crime and antisocial behaviour, ASB. Local ASB, including public urination, aggressive behaviour, and unwanted sexual harassment and advances to females, are covered by the order. But despite the PSPO being in place, all this ASB, that is public urination, aggressive behaviour, unwanted sexual harassment of females, continues in Perivale. Police resources, of course, very stretched, and they do not have the capacity to tackle ASB all the time. The police undertook Operation Bottle Top in Perivale about Greenford and Perivale about 8 to 10 years ago. And that the objective of that was to confiscate alcohol from street drinkers causing ASB. But that operation has not continued. Again, the police are very stretched. The most recent crime statistics for the ward, for Perivale Ward, in fact, demonstrate that ASB, strongly linked to street drinking, constitutes about 25% of all crime in Perivale. And jointly with violent crime, ASB is constantly the category most reported to police in the ward. Needless to say, the very last thing that Perivale and residents need or want is for more alcohol to be sold locally to fuel this drunken crime and ASB. Now, let's examine, committee, the situation of Perivale Station Kiosk. I mean the geographic situation. It is located directly opposite to the footpath running from the station to the Midway Village residential estate through a park. That's Ealing Central Sports Ground. Along this footpath are 4 benches where groups of drunk men regularly assemble. I would add that closing at 7 p.m. or opening whatever time makes absolutely no difference. Street drinkers congregate there all day long. They're drunk men gathering there during the day, and alcohol, once bought, of course, can be drunk later anyway. And I should also add, if, evening opening and dark sale of alcohols during dark hours is a concern, obviously in winter, it's already dark at 7 p.m. And has already been dark for several hours. Now, I would say that I can only imagine how intimidating coming across these drunken men opposite the Perivale Station Kiosk on that footpath it might be for a female or vulnerable resident. But in fact, local women have many times spoken to me in my capacity as volunteer and campaigner locally. They've many times spoken to me about how intimidated and how they've been aggressively approached and threatened by such groups when walking along the footpath at night. And I can just add, I'm a 6'4" well-built man. But I have myself been threatened by such a group, an individual from such a group who thought that I was, just by walking by and actually picking up some of the litter that they leave, they dump all their cans and bottles all over the ground. Just by walking past, minding my own business, picking up some of their litter, they felt I was invading their territory. This is the kind of aggressive nature of the people that we have to deal with, right? So, the station kiosk is in close proximity to messy residential homes in Perivale. It is not a commercial area. It's not the sort of, you can't justify it saying, well, this is part of a town centre shopping district where, it's not that at all. It's a residential area. And there are no other shops in the vicinity of the station, even at the station. So if the application were passed, it would very likely adversely impact the peace and quiet of the local residential homes. This part of Perivale, particularly the Medway village, which is down the footpath, very close by, and Horsenden Lane south of the railway line, also has rapidly escalating problems with certain multiple occupancy home, that's HMO tenants, some of whom have major problems of alcoholism as well as drug taking, which incidentally, and that's going to be part of the subject of the council's recommendation for an immediate Article 4 direction to cover Perivale Ward to be discussed at this evening's planning committee meeting. A CCTV camera I'm going to address this point now. So apparently there's been a condition agreement with the police. But the CCTV camera directly, simply by the shop outside the station, will do nothing to deter street drinking and the antisocial behaviour in the surrounding vicinity, because it only covers the area immediately outside the station kiosk. Right? So even if the CCTV were in fact installed and all the other police conditions were complied with, it wouldn't be adequate to deal, because it simply wouldn't cover all the street drinking and antisocial behaviour that goes on in the vicinity. Now, let me read out an extract from a statement that one female resident has sent me, and I can add that I've been sent many other such accounts, some involving victims of assault and sexual harassment, which are equally, if not more, harrowing. I quote, "I have seen men who have urinated against the fencing by the pathway and then forgotten to pull up their trousers so that their genitalia are on show whilst young children are walking through with their parents. It is totally unacceptable. And as a woman, I never walk through the park now after dark, unless someone is meeting me at the other side, because of the fact that the groups of men tend to congregate and drink on those benches. They're intimidating. The amount of rubbish also that's left over, so much of it empty cans and bottles." I think that perhaps makes the point more clearly than I could possibly do myself. But I would really urge the council, the sub-licensing committee to carefully consider everything that I've said here, to carefully consider my statement and indeed those of the other residents who have spoken, and note the number of residents who not only have registered to speak here today, but also who would very much like to speak, but have been afraid of supplying their names and addresses to the applicant for fear of repercussions, and perhaps the women who have been victims of ASB and sexual assault, who obviously very obvious reasons, don't want to necessarily come forward, but nonetheless, I can tell you now there's a huge amount of local people who are very strongly opposed to this application. So I would therefore ask the sub-licensing committee to reject this application. And in fact, I would say the only reasonable course of action would be to reject the application. Thank you very much. I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. I think what we'll do, we'll ask Miss Debbie and Miss Flynn to give their to present their case, and then I will then ask Mr. Mayhew and fellow councillors if they have any questions for you. Miss Debbie, can you present your case, please?
Thank you so much. I would ask this current administration to reject the application. Number one, the lack of transparency that has come out of the report. I've been waiting months for Met Police to provide statistics on the number of visits they're making to Medway and Perivale. To date, the Met have not provided this information. So in fact, the panel do not have a full and clear idea of what is going on in Medway, although we have been featured in local newspapers, so they'll probably have to Google that. I'm aware that there have been other meetings and Medway is now a crime hotspot. And I'd like to know then, or suggest, how are we then fixing foundations with a council that is complicit to the overselling of alcohol? We've not had data presented from the applicant for him to be aware there is a saturation of alcohol. Alcohol is the last thing that Perivale needs, especially as Alex has pointed out, the type of people that the authority is moving into the area, they are susceptible to alcohol and drugs. I'm sorry that we didn't have the data to provide that, but if the Met had a proper checklist, this should have been included in whatever they are presenting to support this application. And it's bizarre that the Met would support this application knowing what or how often they are frequent in the area, including recently holding a walk and talk with residents and trying to get address the insecurities that women feel and residents feel of being comfortable in the area. Okay, I think I've already said the area is already over facilitated with shops selling alcohol. That's shops in Medway, shops along Bilton Road, Tesco's, even local pubs up on the Hosenden Hill, and then on the other side of the A40. More alcohol is the last thing that Perivale needs. Statistics were requested from Anil Sharma and Crystal Govers because I also sit on the Independent Police Advisory Board. And, you know, it's just so sad that the lack of transparency and police saying that they want the community's trust, and yet they are working with a shop owner to sell more alcohol. This is, it's just so underhand, it's bizarre. And if one was to take a look at the links that I provided of crimes in my area and the police's own turnaround plan on more trust, less crime and high standards, it's all going against what documents they are putting out to what they are actually doing in the community. The police are already overstretched. They are in the thousands of being short-staffed. And as we've seen, even the applicant himself is so short-staffed, only one person running the shop. He's lacking resources that he's traveling and he can't seem to connect anywhere, a hotel or an internet shop, to hear what the residents. So to me, this just shows a lack of respect for the residents and the area that he's trying to maximize his business through. I don't support this application. I've written to my MP. I've raised a complaint on the process. The process is flawed. And if this current administration supports it, I definitely have to just keep on complaining higher. This is not the foundation that this administration should be about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Debbie. Ms. Magda, would you like to present your case, please?
I would make it brief. I completely agree with Alex and Ms. Debbie on their representations in relation to social behavior and an impact on the local community. I just want to stress that I am a mother. I'm a mother of a child with special needs, and me and my special needs child were abused by people drinking within vicinity of the special exclusion zone on Bilton Road. So creating those zones without having it policed does not stop unsocial drinking. I also want to ask about the social cost and cost directly to the council. Adding policing this type of situations, the kiosk can't, while the kiosk cannot bear responsibility where people make drinks, kiosk makes it more available for people to have very quick access to drinks. Having access to alcoholic drinks is not human rights. We are in Perivale within 5 minutes of walk of alcohol or shop which sells alcohol at different time of the day. Adding another license adds nothing to the customer experience unless it's high-level artisan shop. Secondly, it is a commuter shop. That's why I asked Mr. Mayhew about the footfall and the statistics related to it. The most people, the way I observe it, coming to the premises first thing in the morning or within 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the afternoon commuters time. Bringing alcohol sales during the day does not gonna make any impact on those people who come in and out of the station. It's gonna allow more people to have access to alcohol during the day, where the station is less frequently used. So while I support also the kiosk owner, and I left lots of money there in a good faith, I don't see how adding alcohol helps his business case if it is initially, it's like as Mr. Mayhew projected, intended to serve commuters. I am also concerned about adding Sunday. This kiosk has never been open on Sundays simply because there is not enough people. We do not need definitely more alcohol on Sunday, and I'm not looking at the licensing application itself, Mr. Mayhew. I'm looking at the high impact of adding simply one more place where people can have free access to alcohol, including also health issues. We want Perivale to be healthier place. This application adds absolutely nothing. And likely the shop will be withdrawing some lines of products which are not alcohol related. So actually those who are not consuming alcohol, it probably will have negative impact as well. Therefore, I strongly oppose this simply on the grounds that this application brings lots of budget constraint for the council, lots of issues of social misbehavior, and simply does not add anything to the local area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will move now to questions. Starting with Mr. Mayhew, would you like to ask the objectors any questions?
No, Chair, I think I'll deal with that in my summing up.
Thank you. Fellow councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Sanjay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, what I want to ask is, I can see from the residents that this is a very popular local convenience store, but I also acknowledge the fact that it's got a small area, it's quite a small shop, kiosk. Does he really have the space to introduce? Well, he has the space, but is it at the expense of less lines of convenience lines to be sold? Because at the end of the day, the space is the same. He's introducing a counter at the back to store the alcohol. He's also going to have a fridge which stores alcohol. That requires space. And I'm just wondering, yes, he certainly has the right to increase his business. Profit maximization is an important objective of all businessmen. But I'm just, is the place conducive of him to be able to add this? Does he really have the space? Just like your opinion on that.
Well, I mean, obviously, if the area, if the display space is full as it is at the moment, and you're adding a line, whatever that line may be, the alcohol or other lines, then something gives way for that. Does that necessarily mean that you have less lines? It can do, but it can also mean that, if you have 4 rows of Coke in the fridge, you put that down to 2 and you add 2 different lines in the space you've made up. So I think the nature of the display of how, you're right. I mean, every business has to maximize profitability. That's a very different thing to greed, which was mentioned earlier on. But he's not going to get rid of a line which is profitable to put in a line which is not. And I don't necessarily think that it follows that, for example, you're going to sell less soft drinks and more alcohol. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, in my opinion. You can sell the same amount, you just have to replenish it more often because you don't have as much in the fridge.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. Councillor Nagpal.
Thank you. My question is for Alex, and it's fine if you don't have a full answer to this. You mentioned that the antisocial behaviour occurs throughout the day. Are there particular times of the day where you have data on more antisocial behaviour occurring, or is it genuinely consistently high throughout the day? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, Councillor, obviously I'm not the police. I don't have crime statistics in front of me. I do, however, as I say, I've lived in the area many years, and I interact with a lot of residents. I'm very familiar with the local residents, with the geography of the area, and I've seen obviously the vicinity at all times of the day. I would say that this problem with drinking, it's throughout the day. I've seen street drinkers there early in the morning, I've seen them there late at night after dark, and I've seen them in the afternoon. It kind of continues all the time. So there isn't one particular time where it's worse than other times. And I also want to make another point. This is obviously station kiosk is there serving a lot of commuters on the tube. It's actually illegal to drink alcohol on the tube. I think that's a point that needs to be made as well. And it shouldn't, therefore, we shouldn't be incentivizing people to pick up alcohol to take onto the tube, because that is actually an offence as well. It's been made not illegal.
Councillor Nagpal, do you have any more questions? Councillor Sanjay, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is a question from Mr. Mayhew.
Yeah.
And it has been addressed by my colleague, Councillor Nagpal. How open are you to the suggestion of not starting at 8 a.m. in the morning, but changing to 10 a.m.? How open are you to that?
Councillor Colley, I think Mr. Mayhew had already agreed on the timing, 10 a.m.
I don't think so. I'm not sure if he's agreed or he's acknowledged the fact that we can consider that. Well, I need a clarity on that point, please.
Okay.
Chair, I'm happy to clarify that. Listen, we applied for the hours we applied for, so they're obviously the hours we're seeking with this application. My point was to state that we had the conversation about would there be other hours that we would look at. I had that conversation with the applicant, and I think if the hours are going to change, I think 10 o'clock is a reasonable hour for that at that point. So that would be my. I think it is for the committee to make that decision today. But if you're asking for my opinion, then I think 10 o'clock is a reasonable alternative if that was something which you felt would help with, for example, the street drinking issue.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Peter. I have no further questions.
Thank you, councillors.
Can I
Miss
make a
Debbie.
point? Thank you so much.
Yes, please.
Do you know what I think is missing? And I appreciate councillors are very busy, but Medway Village is a family, very much a family area. If the councillors could bring your heart to what is going on here, visit that kiosk yourself and see the size of it yourself, because we can give you dimensions and measurements, but until you actually go in there and see yourself that small space, they don't have the space to do more than what they're already doing. If you take the time to then cross the road and see the park that the current administration is trying to make into a nature reserve, and then you have to ask yourself, where does alcohol come into a nature reserve? And then if you walk through the Medway Village and see the homes and the families and the people that are there, we are already adjusting to the HMOs and the new people with their own demands and needs coming in. And we've explained that alcohol is not even going to serve these people, much less the residents. And then if you walk even more to the parade of shops, you will see there are shops there that sell alcohol. Tesco's sell alcohol. If you speak with the shop owners, they are fearful of how Perivale, Medway Estate especially, is turning into. We've had machete attacks, we've had police with guns, we've had our own local, in the chemist, the woman attacked there. The administration and Met Police cannot have it both ways. You cannot talk and say you want the safety of women and better communities and that you're going to do better, foundation work and everything like that. Meanwhile, on the other hand, you're aiding people to bring our community down, and we don't know, we don't even have the transparency to know if how well does this person know our community to understand bringing alcohol is not going to serve the community.
Thank you, Ms. Debbie. Ms. Magda, I see your hand is raised. Do you have any questions? You're on mute.
It's only 5 years doing it. I just wanted to ask the question which was not addressed in here. It's about the safety of the passage through the station car park. Obviously, thank you. We've been speaking a lot about the Medway and CCTV related to related to immediately to the kiosk. But my question is to councillors: does council at the moment have enough money and funds to fund another CCTV going through the station car park, which is just, you know, it's like by the kiosk and by the bus station, probably including bus station, so we can absolutely ensure that there is no unsocial behavior around the area? And will the council have means to send council
I have to
officers
stop you here,
on a regular basis?
Ms. Magda. This question you should direct it to your ward councillors, because we're not capable in this meeting to give you any advice in terms of CCTV in your area. But it's a very good question that could be directed directly to the ward councillors, who will definitely make sure to, you know, champion for you, you know, for this specific.
Councillor Rima, Councillor Rima, that question has already been put to Met Police and local councillors. What Met Police came back to me with is that they're going to move CCTV from another part of the estate to, so in fact, they're not giving us more, they're shifting around. And the thing is, if you're going to introduce something that's going to cause problems, you need more than the shopkeepers' CCTV. You need more policing. You're going to need more staffing, and this has totally not been covered. And that's why I said the whole application is flawed. We have not had the statistics.
I hear you. I hear you. But unfortunately, we are here today to focus on this hearing, on a licensing application, and not on CCTV.
Yeah, but the point,
unrelated to the
Councillor,
specific.
The point that is missing is that the statistics, the data has not been presented. And the people
we will take this
are
into
here,
consideration. Definitely, we will be taking this into consideration before we decide on this application.
Can I ask a question about?
Sorry, Councillor, are you saying that you're going to look at the data before you make decisions?
No, I said everything you have stated today is going to be considered by the panel, myself and Councillor Kohli and Councillor Nakpal. Everything you have stated, everything all your remarks, all your questions, anything you answered, all this information we will process it, the three of us, the panel, and it will. Sorry, yes, Magda.
Sorry, could I ask a question related directly to the licensing application?
Yes.
I would like to raise the point on Sunday opening. Kiosk has never been open on Sunday. Clearly, there is not enough footfall to do so. And I just wonder whether in considering this, you know, it's like application, it should be stated, you know, it's like in any way that since the kiosk has never been open on Sundays, why the application suddenly, and maybe that's also a question to Mr. Mayhew, why suddenly you are planning to open on Sunday? Well, before there was never a need for it. How could you please explain that? The Perivale demographic has not changed for many years.
Mr. Mayhew.
I mean, I reiterate again that the need for a shop or a business is not a matter for a licensing hearing. You know, this is if the applicant is choosing that they may consider going forwards opening on a Sunday, they would be doing that on the basis of a business plan. If it wasn't profitable, they wouldn't be doing it. And it's perfectly acceptable as long as planning and everything else is in place for a business to choose when it decides to operate, and like all businesses, they'll choose when they think it's reasonable to do so. That is not is. I understand the concerns. I understand all the concerns which are raised, but it's just not a matter for licensing. Licensing can only consider an application against the objectives set out in the Act.
Yeah. Okay, Miss Debbie, I can see that you've got your hand raised. Is it a legacy hand?
It is a legacy hand. Oh, on my end, it doesn't show that it's raised, but
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to add, you know, if these councillors or panel members just think with your heart and ask yourself if you would want this on your doorstep, if you're already surrounded by multiple shops that sell alcohol, if your area is now being introduced with an overwhelming amount of HMOs and the needs of those people,
Yeah.
they do not need to be supported with more alcohol. The residents don't need it. I've explained to you about the machete incidents. We've
Miss
had
Debbie,
police with
Miss
guns.
Debbie,
I really
Miss
want
Debbie,
the councillors
you
to
will have an
consider this.
opportunity to sum up in a minute.
Yeah, thank you so
and you
much.
can add all this. Yeah, thank you. So now I'll move to confirming any conditions offered. So there was only one additional condition added in terms of the opening hours. Mr. Mayhew, you just confirmed that you're okay with 10 a.m. opening.
If that's the decision that's made by the panel, by the committee, then
I know, but
then
you
we'll
just
obviously-
we're
yeah,
just confirming
what I've said is I think the 10 o'clock is if there's to be a change in the hours, I think the 10 o'clock would be a reasonable hour.
Okay. Any additional conditions you'd like to add?
No, I
Before
think I think you have the paper in front of you, hopefully, which has
Yes.
the 5 additional conditions that we've suggested on top of the 15 that have been agreed already.
All right. I will move now to summing up then. I will now invite the responsible authority and objectors to briefly sum up. We don't have a responsible authority, so I will move to Mr. Mayhew, please, if you could sum up.
Oh, Councillor,
Sorry,
the
the objectors. Yes. So I will move to the objectors to sum up, please. Alex and Magda and Debbie, who would like to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. Thank you.
Okay, Debbie.
I just heard, I don't know what the no responsible authority. Anyway, first of all, thank you. Thank you for hosting this meeting. I will repeat, it should not have gone ahead without the applicant, and it should not have gone ahead without the Met Police. And this meeting certainly should not have gone ahead without the full facts and statistics of crime in the area. The applicant does not have the staffing, security or resources. He could not even attend remotely, and most people, usually places you travel to, you can, whether it's a hotel or internet shop, you can come on and support your own case. I hope the panel make a thorough investigation by visiting the kiosk themselves, because they will be flabbergasted with what they see. And the fact that we have agencies like the local authority and Met Police talking about you know, community engagement and gaining trust and everything like that, wanting women to feel safe, and yet they are considering such an application which will not bring security to women, families and generally residents in the area. I feel so strongly I will not be shopping at that shop again. Please, if the panel members be human. These are not just forms, these are lives that you are impacting. Visit the shop, get your own answers, visit the space. Greed, profit maximization does not take priority over the safety of residents and children. If you are aware of the crime that has gone on, men half naked exposing themselves to children, yeah, nurseries that where they've had to look at their security because of what is going on in the area. You have to know the area before you consider the applications. You have to bring your heart and the human of you to these applications, because the process is flawed. I don't understand how an application is considered without the crime stats being provided. The police should have provided the stats. I've been trying for months to get these stats. Alex will know, you know, even emailing my MP has not helped so that I could bring these stats to you myself. But definitely hundreds of residents opposed this application. I'm not sure why only 5 are showing up at the council's end, but you know, we've already come outside the town hall and the residents here are prepared to protest again. When the current administration's leader says that he's about the foundation, this is where it starts. Bringing alcohol to a village community is not the foundation that the current administration should be singing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie. Miss Magda, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I just considering all the discussion we had just now, my closing station is to strongly oppose extending into the off license the station kiosk. Station kiosk existed for years, being a commuter hub, very important place for people to come and go for the little grocery shoppings. It has never been a place where people shop for the proper food and amnesties. Most of the stock in there is just quickly grab and go food. You know, it's like with maybe exception of some milk and very basic choice of bread. Replacing bread with alcohol will do no good to anyone. And kiosk will survive. There is no economic need for kiosk to survive on sales of alcohol. In contrary, selling alcohol will bring more people who already have lots of health issues and social behavior issues, and it brings nothing, virtually nothing, to the Ealing's economy or well-being of Perivale. And again, as a local activist, mother, and the person who suffers firsthand from unpleasant behavior, I would urge councillors to oppose these applications.
Thank you, Ms. Magda. Alex?
Yeah, thank you. Someone's just messaged me actually and brought to my attention that they objected, but their email bounced back. And I'm aware that, for example, emails sent from the Medway Village group email address have recently been bouncing back, sent to the council, have been bouncing back. So I think there may be an issue there. In any case, I know I've already said there are a great many local residents who would have objected that are simply concerned about, you know, having their names and addresses disclosed to the applicant as the procedure requires. I mean, look, you've heard from all the residents, you've heard about the extremely serious concerns about progressing as well, just procedurally, without obtaining first local crime statistics from the police. I have done my very best to try and bring that information, though, on anti-social behaviour and a breakdown of how prolific that is in the local area. Magda said, you know, I think so. Debbie said that she wouldn't be shopping at the kiosk if this application is passed. I think I would make the same decision, I'm in touch with a vast number of local residents, and I very much expect that many of them will take that same decision. As Magda says, the station kiosk has been running successfully for many years. They do not need to sell alcohol there, and they certainly do not need to replace healthy, you know, groceries and things that, you know, nutritious food with unhealthy alcohol that brings down the area. So the applicant has tried to and successfully won the respect of the community through he's very friendly, but I'm afraid he will lose that in an instant if this application passes. So for all the reasons I've set out and all the other resident objectors have set out, I would very strongly urge the sub-licensing committee to carefully consider these and to reject the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Mr. Mayhew, can you please sum up?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to try and rebut a couple of the points which were raised by the residents. We have 5 resident objections. I'm in no doubt that various residents have spoken, for example, with Alex. I don't rebut that. But only 5 residents have made representations. We've the suggestion that there's intimidation. I completely accept that some people feel intimidated by various things, but as been said already, Mr. Patel is a very friendly and approachable person, and we don't get access to names and addresses. We get names, and in fact, on one of the representations, we didn't even have a name, so that's all redacted. So, there hasn't. We have some representations. We accept the concerns that are raised around street drinking and antisocial behaviour. What we don't accept is that this is an application around greed. This is a business, and businesses are entitled to work for profit. And we also don't accept that the picture that's painted here today, and of course it's because we're looking at the negative side of this business, but the vast majority of people who are going to shop in this shop will go in, buy a bottle of wine, go to their friend's house, get on the tube, and so on, right? Those are the people who are going to pick up a drink as a convenience. And it doesn't follow, for example, of course, drinking on the tube is illegal, but it's not illegal to take a drink onto the tube and go somewhere else. And most people, the vast majority of the population in this country, that's how they behave. So what the license has to do is it has to look at, well, how do you deal with the people who don't behave like that? How do we deal with that problem? And there's a lot of talk again today about this premise is providing more alcohol in the area. And the way businesses work is they compete. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're providing overall more alcohol just because there's another shop. It means we're providing more options for people and more convenience for people who may be going by or going to that particular shop. If someone buys, if I buy a can of beer in one shop, doesn't mean I'm going to buy another can of beer in a different shop. So there is a difference between how much alcohol is going to be consumed and who's consuming that alcohol. And so the way we have to deal with those people who do have issues around alcohol is to put measures into place to restrict their access to that alcohol. And that's what we do with the conditions. And that's what the licensing policy statement, which basically sets out how Ealing is going to manage the licensing process in the area, and it sets out very key factors as to how you should deal, for example, with street drinking. And we've agreed to abide by all of those factors by putting conditions on the license, which if the license holder breaks, they are then liable for fines of an unlimited amount or a review of that premises license. So if this premises does become an issue, the residents absolutely have the right to review that license, and that's the way the licensing process should work. I also want to address very briefly this issue around the police, because there's been a lot of discussion around police data and so on. Now, obviously, we don't have access to that data. The police have access to that data, and they have looked at that data. They've looked at their resources. They've looked at the application. They've discussed with us around the conditions, and they have decided that this application in its current format does not raise concerns with them. We all know that the police's resources are stretched, but they obviously don't feel that this application is going to stretch their resources any further. Otherwise, they would have maintained their objections. This application goes out not only to all the residents, it goes out to 10 responsible authorities, including environmental health, including health and safety, including public health. None of those people have come back, and these are the experts in their field. None of them have come back making representation to this premises. Now, finally, and I won't go over anything, I'll try and avoid going over things too much, but there's been a discussion around the number of shops available in the area. There's none in the immediate vicinity of this particular shop. There are in other parts of the borough, of course, but there is no cumulative impact policy in place here. So this idea around whether we need another shop is somewhat irrelevant in relation to the licensing policy, because if there was too many premises in the immediate area, too much availability to alcohol leading to crime and disorder, then the council would certainly think about putting a cumulative impact policy in place. And that would then limit the number of new premises that could be applied for in that area, subject to representations. So all I would say in conclusion is, the application is for a premises that will be run responsibly. The resources are there to run that premises responsibly. The idea that one person can't run a very small premises is simply not true. It's perfectly reasonable for them to do so. If they need more people, they'll employ more people, of course. But the immediate assumption that somehow they can't manage their premises is simply not been proven here. We have 20 conditions in place offered on this application. The hours are well within the core hours, which the core hours for licensing in Ealing's licensing policy statement are to 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock at weekends. For this type of premises, we're well within those hours. We've discussed the hours in the morning, and we are happy to accept the 10 o'clock if the committee feel that would make a difference to the concerns that were raised. But we hope that that this premises, with the conditions offered, run responsibly, would be something that the committee would accept.
Thank you, Mr. Mayhew. I will move now to deliberation. The panel will retire to deliberate together with legal advisor and clerk. And I think we should be back about 12:15. Sean, Ms. Hattoon, what do you think of the timing?
Yeah, that's good.
12:15. Okay. Thank you.
So for clarity, Chair, are
Yes.
we leaving the meeting and returning, or are we simply just going to be on mute?
You can stay.
No, Councillor, if everyone would like to leave the meeting and then rejoin using the same link that was you joined with.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank you for clarifying, Sean.
Thank you.
Could you please
Hello?
confirm it's
Hello?
12:15? Is that correct? Is that when you
12:15, yes. 12:15. Thank you.
Thank you very much.